Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, let's jump right into it today, because right now, in 2026, we're right in the middle of a massive shift in the tech landscape. The cost of raw AI intelligence is racing straight toward zero. Models are getting smarter, they're getting faster, and on paper, they're getting way cheaper by the day. But if you're out there actually building products or managing an enterprise budget, you already know there's a huge difference between the sticker price you see online and the literal check you have to write at the end of the month. So today, we're going to unpack the true cost of these models and look way beyond the initial price tag.
54 times. Let that sink in for a second. That is the potential price difference a startup processing, say, 10 million queries a month could see, entirely depending on which model they choose. For example, if you route those queries through xAI's Grok 4.1 Fast, you're looking at roughly $2,400. Not bad, right? But if you route that exact same volume through OpenAI's premium GPT 5.5 Pro, your bill absolutely explodes to over $130,000. That is a 54x multiplier just based on your foundational model choice.
So, that brings up the million-dollar question. If raw intelligence is trending towards zero, why on earth are enterprise AI budgets actually exploding? Well, to really understand this, we need to start thinking about AI pricing like an iceberg. That flashy headline price per million tokens? Yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg poking out above the water. Just below the surface is this massive hidden block of costs that is actively sinking enterprise budgets. We really need to look under the water here.
And that brings us to our first core concept for today, the cheap token illusion. It's a widely held yet incredibly dangerous belief that a lower API price automatically equals a cheaper deployment.
If we compare the current baseline list pricing for a few top frontier models, you'll see what I mean. Grok 4.1 Fast comes in really aggressively, just 20 cents per million input tokens and 50 cents for output. Then we step up to Google's Gemini 3.1 Pro, which sits at $2 for input and $12 for output. And finally, OpenAI's flagship GPT 5.5 comes in at $5 for input and a whopping $30 for output. Now, it's best to think of these numbers exactly like the sticker price on a car sitting at a dealership. It tells you what you have to pay to drive it off the lot, sure, but it tells you absolutely nothing about the maintenance, the fuel efficiency, or your insurance costs down the road.
To actually survive this market, we have to completely change our measurement metric. Leading AI FinOps teams in 2026, they don't measure value in cost per token anymore. They measure cost per accepted, completed task. Basically, you have to calculate the total financial and computational expense required to produce a single user-approved output. That means factoring in the retries when a model fails a tool call, your caching strategies, and all that infrastructure overhead. This paradigm shift is absolutely crucial,
Which naturally leads us into the hidden costs of deep thinking. Because as these models have gotten better at reasoning, really thinking through complex problems, they've also gotten incredibly good at quietly burning a hole in your wallet. Let's actually break down the specific traps that catch people off guard. First up, reasoning models think before they speak, right? Well, those hidden thinking tokens are usually billed as expensive output tokens. Second, you've got context pricing traps. For instance, Gemini 3.1 Pro literally doubles its pricing if your prompt pushes past 200,000 tokens. GPT 5.5 does the exact same thing above 272,000 tokens. So if you're running heavy retrieval augmented generation, you can easily trip this wire and double your bill in an instant. Third, cache misses. If you aren't managing your prompt structure perfectly, cache misses will drastically spike your input costs. And finally, if a model fails a tool call and has to retry, it is multiplying your token usage for that one single task.
And here is where the danger really lies, 21.8%. A recent study by Microsoft Research found that cheaper reasoning models actually end up costing more nearly a quarter of the time. In some edge cases, they cost up to 28 times more. And why is that? Well, because a quote-unquote cheaper model might require constant prompting, extra supervision, and tons of retries just to get the right answer. Meanwhile, a more expensive model might just nail it on the very first try, completely saving you the hidden costs of all that computational back and forth.
Now, whenever costs come up in this space, someone inevitably jumps in and says, well, just use an open weight model and run it yourself. So we really need to unpack what I call the open source myth.
Look, the reality is neither path is truly free. On one hand, open weight self-hosting does eliminate variable token fees, sure. But now you're paying for hardware accelerators, power, cooling, strict security protocols, a ton of engineering overhead, and the constant, never-ending need to refresh your models as new ones are released. On the other hand, closed APIs save you from those hardware headaches, but you are completely at the mercy of variable token fees, priority premiums, and those nasty cache miss penalties we just talked about. Ultimately, self-hosting only really becomes cost-effective when you have very high, highly predictable utilization.
Okay, let's pivot to another massive hidden cost that rarely gets discussed during procurement, the hallucination tax. According to the recent Order from Chaos study on unstructured data, there is a staggering 843% variance in hallucination ratios across the top models tested. The open-weight GPT-12b model actually demonstrated the lowest hallucination ratio, while Grok came in about 40% higher, and some others were just wildly off the mark. But here is why this matters. Every single hallucinated response is a direct tax on your budget. It's wasted compute, it's wasted time, and it usually requires expensive human intervention to go in and fix it.
On top of hallucinations, models also suffer from a severe inflation problem. The same study showed a 209% inflation ratio, meaning an AI will happily invent dozens of categories for a task where a human would naturally only use 4. This overproduction burns through unnecessary, highly expensive output tokens, and again, forces costly human reviews to clean up the mess. You are quite literally paying the AI to make extra mistakes.
So knowing all these pitfalls exist, how do we actually survive? It's time to start calculating the true cost.
The answer lies in what is arguably the most critical enterprise strategy of the year, AI FinOps. Smart teams don't just pick one model and call it a day anymore. They build a dynamic, hybrid routing portfolio. Basically, AI FinOps is the emerging discipline of actively managing your costs by monitoring your token usage in real time, aggressively implementing prompt caching strategies, and dynamically routing queries. You want the simple tasks going to the cheap models, and only the hardest, most complex tasks going to the expensive flagship models.
So here is the modern procurement loop you should be following. Step 1. Filter the leaderboards just for baseline capability. Like, if you need coding, make sure the model actually clears the SW bench threshold. Step 2. Never trust the benchmark alone. You have to run a custom evaluation regression on your own actual company data. See how many retries it takes for your specific tools to work. And Step 3. Wire your choice into an agent command center for dynamic routing, complete with an automatic fallback model. This ensures you are constantly optimizing for both cost and reliability.
There's a brilliant quote from the Ying2 Tech blog that really hits the nail on the head here. They wrote, "The winner is the provider with the lower accepted output cost for your workload, not the lower input token number." The true cost of a model is determined by how efficiently it solves your specific problem, and that is entirely independent of its marketing sticker price.
So let's wrap up today with this final provocative thought. If the cost of raw AI intelligence and text generation is virtually trending to zero, where are you going to create your value? Moving forward, your competitive moat won't be as simple as wrapping a basic API call. It's going to be in your data pipelines, your FinOps routing, and how brilliantly you integrate AI into actual human workflows. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this helps you master the true cost of your models. Catch you next time.